Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Over $20 billion is spent annually on weight loss products, yet 69% of American adults are considered obese. What are we doing wrong? Could we be faced with a food addiction problem? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you on X-Zone TV and X-Zone Broadcast Network. We're produced by REL-MAR McConnell Media Company with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. With us this hour to delve into food addiction and possible solutions is Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Dr. Fuhrman is a board-certified family physician and 7 times New York Times best-selling author. His latest book is Eat for Life. An internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing, he specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods. His website, drfuhrman.com. Dr. Fuhrman, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
My pleasure. Excited to be here.
So, as a family physician, how much education on nutrition did you receive in med school?
You know, I went to med school with a specific intent to be a doctor specializing in nutrition, to get that degree. But conventional physicians who are just using the education they got in school, they learn about vitamin C causing scurvy and B6 deficiency causing pellagra, but they don't really learn anything about applied nutrition, how to encourage, motivate, and treat people with diseases through nutrition. They just don't learn anything about it.
And yet we are what we eat, right?
That's right. And you know, that's the exciting thing, is that in the last decade, we've exploded a huge amount of nutritional science that's given us the tools now where people don't have to have heart attacks and strokes, and it can prevent more than 90% of cancers. So yes, we have new available evidence where we have this unprecedented opportunity in human history to age slower and to live longer than we could have in our past. And we can only do that with nutritional excellence.
That's pretty amazing that something as simple as eating can make all that difference. So what made you decide that this was the case, that you wanted to specialize in it?
You know, even in my teenage years, in my young 20s, I was reading health and nutrition books. And I pursued conventions and educational opportunities to see how nutrition could affect performance in athletes, because I was on the world figure skating team and I was a professional athlete after that. So it was at first started with my father being overweight and sickly, and then it moved to better performance and better stamina in sports. And then it moved to my interest in just reading all the materials I could and finding out how fascinating it was, and then deciding to pursue a career in that. Which has been, I've been so blessed and, lucky to have a career that's been enabling me to help people and transform their lives for the better, and having that influence on people and watching them have a new trajectory in their future of great health has been tremendously satisfying.
So once a person becomes a doctor, they get extremely busy, is my understanding. Have you been able to stay on the leading edge of the new information, the new studies that are coming out?
Well, that's right, because that is my specialty, actually, that I read like 30,000 studies. And so when I write certain books, I might include 2,000 scientific references in the book. And so I have to become very aware of all the studies on both sides of every issue. And what you find is that, contrary to what people think in the lay press or people who are just listening to things on the internet, they think that everything is so controversial and nobody knows the answers and all the evidence is all contradictory. But that's not really what you see when you investigate the large amount of nutritional research. It all points in the same direction if you're looking at it as a whole. And the higher quality studies point in that same direction. So nutritional science is not as confusing as most people think it is. And now in the last 20 years, we've experienced the growth of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which I was one of the founding members of. And now that physicians can be board certified in lifestyle medicine, where we've utilized evidence-based medicine so doctors can have the ability to give people nutritional advice that's effective, not just to prevent disease, but to reverse disease, to get rid of people's diabetes, to reverse their high blood pressure, reverse their heart disease, to have their psoriatic arthritis go away, to have their lupus get better, to have their asthma go away. Instead of just treating people with drugs for the rest of their life, we can actually get to the cause and have the person make a full recovery.
So lifestyle medicine, that includes eating. Does it include anything else?
Yes, of course, because lifestyle includes obviously getting enough rest and sleep and having good emotional poise and, with wisdom, removing stress in your life. But it also has to do with exercising regularly. And of course, the major factor here is not smoking, not drinking, and eating right, putting what you put in your mouth. And of course, environmental concerns as well play a role, obviously exposure to pollution and smoke. But the major factor is what people put in their mouth.
Interesting. So I while preparing for the show, I looked into weight issues and found the average American is at least 23 pounds overweight. What's causing this at this point?
Well, the waistlines and the weight of Americans has climbed. For example, the average woman in 1920 weighed about 120 pounds. Now the average American woman, as you're saying, weighs about 160 pounds, just using women as an example. But so we've gotten bigger, we've gotten larger, and that has the trajectory of the enlarging fat stores and enlarging size of Americans parallels the rise in heart attack rates and cancer rates. And autoimmune disease, by the way, which has increased dramatically. Years ago, 100 years ago, we had more people dying of infectious disease. With improvements in sanitation and antibiotics, and we've had a reduction of infectious disease, and more of these diseases of nutritional ignorance has taken over as leading causes of death. We're not generally living longer today than they lived 100 years ago, 50 years ago. We're just dying of different causes. Now we're dying of poor nutrition and food excess. I always say half of what we eat meets our nutritional needs, and the other half meets the needs of our doctors. Meaning that the extra calories we eat is what is the major cause of disease, because fat on the body promotes inflammation, increases risk of infection, cancer, heart disease, stroke, and ages us rapidly. So there's no such thing as a healthy overweight person, because fat itself makes you insulin resistance. Insulin is a major fat storage hormone that also drives spread of cancer, or drives angiogenesis, which is the ability of a cell of a cancerous tumor to glean a blood supply. So we're saying that fat cells activate the aromatase system, which make you produce more estrogen. They make you insulin resistant, which makes you produce more insulin. So they're hormonally unfavorable. And fat cells, of course, because they get a poor blood supply, spew out pro-inflammatory compounds that make the body age faster and increase risk of infection-related death as well.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that about them putting out all the inflammatory stuff, if you will. So how you speak about we eat more calories than we need. Okay. But what about the quality of our food? Hasn't it gone down considerably since, over the years, the past, 20, 30 years?
Yes, since World War II and the fast food revolution, people are eating more processed foods, more white flour, more oils, more fried foods, more sugar, more. They're eating foods that do not have nutrients in them. The quality of the food went down because we're eating processed foods, restaurant food, and fast foods, and packaged foods. That's why the quality went down. The quality of a cucumber didn't go down. It's the quality of what we're eating went down. We're not eating, but produce is about, as produce as a whole, is about 10% of the American diet right now. It should be 90% of what we eat. But out of that 10%, only 2% is vegetables in the American diet. Americans get 60% from processed foods and 33% from animal products. And I'm saying processed foods are like a bagel or a croissant. They're made of white flour, sugar, and oil. And white flour is a sugar equivalent, because white flour breaks down into sugar before it enters the bloodstream. So it enters the bloodstream as glucose, the same as had you eaten a sugar cube or a candy bar. So white flour, pizza, burger buns are candy. And they're just plain sugar with no nutrient load. And when our body is deprived of nutrients, then we have a higher desire for more calories. So yes, what you're insinuating is that we're eating a lot of calories, but we're not getting a lot of nutrients. And that leads to excessive cravings and the excessive desire to eat more calories. And also it makes the buildup of more inflammatory waste products. We have more pro-inflammatory toxins in the body. And when those toxins try to come out, we feel shaky and weak and fatigued, and we have to eat more food to deal with the extra stimulant, to deal with the fatigue that's caused by the lack of nutrients.
So basically, we're starving amongst plenty.
That's correct. We're nutritionally starved amongst plenty. And because
So,
we're primate, and primates have a huge requirement for antioxidants and phytochemicals from colorful plants like the other primates do.
so how much of a role does the stripping the soil through artificial um, through our current farming practices and adding GMOs, does that have any impact on this?
Well, it has a minor impact, but don't forget, even if you made organic wheat or organic cane sugar with no pesticides, it's the refining and processing of the food that removes more than 90% of the nutrients that were initially there. So it's, even though the soils are, and keep in mind that the corn and the wheat and the soy and these food crops that are grown in the Midwest do have some, over the years, deficiencies in nutrients and more use of pesticides and glyphosate and other toxic and chemicals, which is certainly a negative factor. But people they're not eating vegetables and beans and nuts and fresh fruits, and they're not eating wild blueberries, and they're not eating string beans and broccoli and asparagus, and they're not eating the right foods. Had they eaten the right foods, which are primarily grown in the coastal areas and don't have much soil damage in those areas, they wouldn't have those deficiencies. It's the choice of food that's leading to because if they chose white flour made out of organic white flour, they'd still be just as nutritionally deficient. If they chose, corn oil and sugar made with, so it's not eating organic sugar. It's not eating, better quality white flour. It's not eating white flour. I'm saying a piece of chicken is like a bagel, because neither one because they're both sources of macronutrients. The chicken gives us protein and some fat, and the bagel gives us carbohydrate, mostly high glycemic carbohydrate, but neither one has a significant micronutrient load of phytochemicals and antioxidants. Those phytochemicals and antioxidants that the human body requires are found in colorful produce, which people in America are not eating sufficient quantities of. So it's not really the deficiency of what's in the bagel or the chicken. It's that they should be eating more produce that has those full level. And as you know, when you eat tree foods like nuts and fruits, you have roots that grow down 20 feet into the soil, 10 feet into the soil,
Right.
and you can't make that soil that toxic. It's been
Exactly.
there for years. And even if they're
Right.
spraying something on the tree, the nut, the avocado, the fruit the pesticides
Well,
don't penetrate all
I'm
through
sorry.
those fruits.
I'm sorry, Dr.
Mm.
Fuhrman. It is time for a station break. So, Dr. Fuhrman and I will be back shortly. Don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. With all the diets available, why are we still getting fat? With us this hour discussing the complex issue of diet and weight loss is Dr. Joel Fuhrman. His website, drfuhrman.com. Dr. Fuhrman, why? Why, with all the diets out there, are we still getting fat? It's not like there aren't a lot of diets that Mediterranean diet, any kind of diet that recommends that we eat more fruits and vegetables, and yet here we are. What's going on?
Well, people are habituated and addicted to unhealthy eating, so they have a hard time changing their diet. Everybody knows a salad is healthy for you, and it's better to eat fruits and vegetables than it is to eat burgers and pizza and fast food and donuts. But people can't stop themselves from pouring oil on their foods and eating high glycemic and high caloric rush foods. Now, I said that rapidly, so let me explain what I just said. The caloric rush means when you eat a food, how many calories enter the bloodstream in one time. Let's say we track 15 minutes after you ate the food. How many calories are being held in the blood? If you ate a peach, a salad, some broccoli, some walnuts, some beans, those would come into the bloodstream slowly, and it would take like 3 or 4 hours for those calories to enter the bloodstream. So you wouldn't put more than 50 calories in the blood at one time. But if you eat something that's greasy, that's made with oil or fried, or something with white flour or sugar, these foods have a tremendous caloric rush where the calories enter instantaneously into the bloodstream. You can put 300 to 500 calories in the bloodstream in the first 15 minutes after you ate that meal. You could never have done that in the history of the human species. You could never have gone out there in the wild and eaten so many calories that are so rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream. And this spike of calories in the bloodstream, which I'm calling the caloric rush, which is similar to the glycemic load of the food, is how much sugar enters the bloodstream all at one time, right? The glycemic load is related to the caloric rush. And that stimulates the areas of the brain, the dopamine centers of the brain get overly stimulated, the same areas that are stimulated by opiates or narcotics are stimulated by the high caloric load rushing into the bloodstream. And the calories I'm talking about are sugar calories in the blood and fat calories in the blood. Because most Americans get their fat from oils and animal fats. Whereas a nutritarian, and that's the term I use for the diet style I recommend, a nutritarian diet, a high nutrient diet. Us nutritarians get most of our fat from eating nuts and seeds and avocados, which the fats absorbed in the bloodstream varies gradually. And we're getting our carbohydrates from vegetables like carrots and peas and beans, where the calories of the carbohydrate calories are coming in the body more slowly as well. We're not spiking the bloodstream with a huge amount of calories. So not only do we become habituated to this high caloric load, as our brain becomes more dopamine resistant and used to the caloric load, we don't feel right if we don't have a high caloric load. We're not satisfied anymore if we don't have an excessive caloric load. So a salad and some broccoli or string beans and nuts or a piece of fruit wouldn't satisfy you. You have to have something more concentrated, like a piece of cheesecake or some ice cream or some candy. You need something that's oily you need a higher caloric load food with a higher caloric rush, or you feel like you're empty because you've overly stimulated the body and you've overstimulated the brain, and you've gotten yourself acclimated to an excessive caloric load with an excessive caloric rush. I'm saying those caloric rush foods don't exist in nature. And had you lived 10,000 years ago, you couldn't have possibly been made your brain become addicted to a piece of fruit. A chimpanzee or a gorilla doesn't sit in front of a tree and eat 40 bananas. They eat a few and they'll go to a different tree for a different type of food, just like we would have done. But now, because not only are our brains addicted to the high caloric load, just like other addictions, we feel poorly and we feel withdrawal when we don't eat food now, because we've overstimulated the body and we've called a buildup of more toxic waste in the body from overeating and eating nutrient poor food, which builds up more free radicals and advanced glycation end products. We're talking about the toxins we talked about from the fat supply, the cytokines, the lipokines. We have more pro-inflammatory substances in the body from overeating and eating low nutrient food and being overweight. So now when we don't eat food, in between meals, when our glucose goes down and we're not digesting, that's when the body goes into a detox mode and tries to repair and heal and remove toxins. And we feel shaky, agitated, fatigued, stomach cramping, headache, and we got to eat food to make us feel good again. So now we're habituated for the discomfort of the withdrawal from eating a poor diet. So I'm going through a lot of different mechanisms of the addictive process.
Well, one mechanism that we didn't touch in on is the emotional one. There is a huge emotional component, is there not, to every addiction, whether it's to opioids or food?
Absolutely. I deal with this all the time because I have a retreat in San Diego where people come here for a month or more to deal with food addiction and emotional overeating problems. And we teach them how to eat healthfully but we also give them a lot of wisdom training, because people are socialized in this Western culture to try to go after other people's approval and to try to feel superior or above people. We're trying to show off, and it makes for that we're going for this type of externally generated self-esteem, trying to get other people's approval, makes it difficult for people to change their diet and be different from the other Americans and their social network and their friends and family, which are going to sabotage them trying to eat healthfully. So we're having to build people's internally generated self-esteem so they have more robust emotional health. Because like you were just insinuating, you need a robust emotional health to not drink when everybody around you is drinking. You need robust emotional health to not smoke when everybody around you is smoking. And you need robust emotional health when you're not looking to approve, when you don't need the approval of other people, you're more like, you're confident in your own self, like a role model, and you're happy to have your ability to enhance your ability to have goodwill for others. And you don't need to have them, you don't need to fit in, so to speak, and have them control your behavior. Because Americans are so sensitive to this social, this idea of pleasing other people and getting other people's approval, they don't feel comfortable eating healthfully while another person's at a restaurant and they don't have comfortable ordering a salad and a bean and serving of beans or whatever they're going to eat. They just feel that it made them look uncomfortable, and they might even be somewhat criticized or ridiculed, or it might put them under stress to be different. So all these things have to be addressed, because the conventional approach is to eat what everybody else eats and to drink alcohol and to recreate with alcohol, right? And to recreate with food that's self-destructive. So self-destructive eating is the norm, and you have to be content with being outside of the norm to succeed.
So one of the other things that's playing in here, I would think, is on self-esteem, is when one becomes obese, there's a huge judgment out there about being fat, even though, people are trying to normalize it now. I mean, they have the social media and your advertising. They're all using the queen-sized model and this sort of thing to try to normalize it. But still, there's a real stigma around being fat. Why isn't that enough of a motivator?
Well, what your body weight is, whether you're 10 pounds overweight or 30 pounds overweight or 50 pounds overweight, it's still, it doesn't change the biology and the addictive nature of conventional eating. What I'm saying right now is the American diet and the way everybody else is eating is so powerfully addictive that it's very hard to people to get off cocaine, heroin, and the fast foods and oils and fried foods and sweets they're eating. And just being overweight and realizing I don't feel good when I'm overweight, I can't move around as well, I'm not thinking as clearly, I'm not as healthy, and I'm fearful of what could happen to me when you develop diabetes or having more dementia risk or depression risk. All these fears of disease in your future is not enough to curtail the intense desire for the caloric rush and the addictive nature of these processed foods. Don't forget, white flour, which I'm saying is a sugar equivalent, right? It doesn't convert into energy efficiently, because the body needs cofactors like vitamins and minerals and to convert it into energy. And as you convert it into energy, you produce free radicals, reactive oxygen species, which have to be diffused by antioxidants. So the body more easily converts those things into fat as opposed to turning them into energy. So now the person is chronically fatigued, even though they're still overeating. So now they feel like they have to overeat to keep their energy up. And because if they don't try to eat food and they start to go into a detox mode and they start to feel shaky and foggy and weak, and eating makes them feel better, they got to keep eating again. So you're saying to a person, go against your biology, and I want you to feel bad to get well, and don't eat the amount of calories your body is biologically demanding. Eat a different amount of calories that makes you feel sick. And it's just too difficult for people who aren't informed about how this works and how to get out of that vicious cycle. It's too difficult to do it. So diets of all description fail because of what you're actually referring to, is that because people don't pay attention enough to the quality of what they eat, number one. And they don't pay attention to the idea that you have to be able to go through a detox period where you're going to temporarily feel worse and even feel more agitation and fatigue while you transfer and you withdraw from these addictive foods you've been consuming, which takes a lot of education and knowledge for people to be able to move their diet in this direction.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the brain fog that you not just get from detoxing, but also from eating these foods. It's like I see people, and it's like their eyes start to get dim and their ability to problem solve and multitask diminishes. Is this also playing into our choices?
That is very important what you just said. I wrote a book about that too. I wrote a book called Fast Food Genocide, because we're talking here about the idea that your own intellect, your ability to succeed in life, your happiness quotient, and your ability to be creative is diminished by poor food and fast food. And we know after the Civil War, for example, that the Caucasian Southerners ate a diet with a lot of corn and molasses and pork, and there was widespread pellagra, which is niacin deficiency. And pellagra causes a rash, which they call a red neck, but it also causes delusional thinking, lack of more anger, easily anger, more homicidal and suicidal type of behavior. And a lot of these people were arrested and put in prisons.
So now you're kind of
exacerbated lynching of blacks in the South after the Civil War. And
well, now you're kind of outlining what we're looking at in our society today, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Is this irrational, violent behavior among children, towards children, school shootings, all this stuff is way up. Do you connect that with the poor diet that we're experiencing as a culture?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm saying that we didn't learn from our history, and we're seeing this all over again, and that the rise of the fast food movement and the growth of food deserts and the lack of food, of nutrition that affects brain function and the ability to weigh evidence, think logically, and be compassionate to others.
Well, I bet you just absolutely cringe as a doctor in nutrition when you see what they're feeding our children in schools.
Absolutely.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
this is all, and you mentioned the word creativity, and absolutely, because to be in good emotional health, you have to have creative goodwill for others. So now if a person says to you, "Oh, if I had to eat that way, I'd rather be dead. Who wants to eat carrot sticks the rest of my life?"
Right.
If you're not looking to come back or to try to put them down or elevate yourself or to argue.
We're going to have to pick up on this important topic on the other side of a station break. Dr. FUHRMAN and I will be back to continue this discussion, so stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Can food be healing? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing diet and health is Dr. Joel FUHRMAN. His website, drfuhrman.com. Dr. FUHRMAN, we've been talking about all the illnesses and the compromises. What about healing? Can we use food to target different diseases?
Yes, that's what's so exciting. And I'm making this radical claim. I'm saying that food or nutritional excellence is more powerful than drugs are. In other words, you can be on blood pressure medications the rest of your life. You can take statin drugs to lower your cholesterol. But the leading cause of death for adults in America is still heart attacks, still heart disease. We could wipe out heart disease across America, at least 95% of it. I mean, there's some genetic, valve defects and other, infection-related valve. There's some things that can't be cured by nutrition, but I'm saying conventional heart attacks or the average heart attack never had to happen if a person ate properly.
Now, I know a lot of
the leading cause of death can become almost completely wiped out and also reversed. 75% of people who followed my nutritarian dietary approach, their blood pressure normalizes within the first month. They don't need blood pressure medications anymore. And 90% are off their medications in the first 4 months, but 75% in the first month. And almost the same thing with type 2 diabetes. They become non-diabetic. 75% of type 2 diabetics don't need any medication. Their blood sugar normalizes, and they can keep it normal for the rest of their life if they stay eating healthfully. And their weight's coming down. Their diabetes is reversing itself. People know that gastric bypass can reverse, and lap band can reverse diabetes, and people lose enough weight, it goes away. But when people eat this healthfully, you even get better results. You even get more weight loss. You even get more diabetes reversing itself, and people start to feel better, and they're not medication dependent. And by the way, a lot of the drugs used for diabetes makes, like insulin and the glucosinurias, they make people gain weight and become more diabetic. It actually accelerates their diabetic-related death and diabetic-related comorbidities. Diabetes get worse from taking the drugs. Can you imagine?
Are there studies that show this? Independent studies?
There's a huge amount of data and studies. One of my books called The End of Diabetes goes into all that data. But there's a book, the Accord study, which was stopped by the U.S. government because they showed that people getting more intensive medical care to keep their glucose lower were having more and more deaths than people who weren't getting so much medical attention, were taking less drugs, making doctors think it's better to let the glucose run higher than lower from taking too much drugs to push it down. But it's not letting it higher is better. It's that the side effects of the drugs that advanced the accelerated diabetes was making people worse. So what I'm saying right now is that nutrition and lifestyle medicine is how you save a person's life with diabetes, not just going to doctors and taking drugs. So we're saying here, yes, there's a huge amount of data on this. And as you can imagine, I have more than 2,000 references, scientific references, in my book that discusses this issue.
Fantastic. Well, what about the diets that have been put out there over the years? They're pretty extreme diets. Like there was one for cancer that you just eat brown rice and nothing but brown rice. Okay. How do those compare with what you're suggesting here?
Well, we've learned over the years that a variety of plant matter gives us this opportunity to slow the aging process and prevent cancer. So we're trying, so that means we have this opportunity to have a variety of different types of produce, not just eating all one type of food like brown rice or living on nothing but white potato or living on nothing. In other words, the fact that we have this opportunity where we can eat like cooked green vegetables, raw green vegetables, orange, red, beans, nuts, we can eat a lot of different types of plant foods. Even the blue zones around the world, which are areas of the world where people are living the longest in the past because culturally, and they've had access to a good quality food and a variety of plants. But in the United States today, we have access to a huge amount of plant material, healthy plant. And frozen is just as good as fresh too. We can get frozen broccoli and frozen peas and you can get anything frozen all year round, frozen wild blueberries. How could our ancestors get wild blueberries and fresh greens in the wintertime if they lived in a northern climate? So what I'm saying right now is part of this opportunity we have to extend human lifespan has to do with our access to a wide variety of food and a wide variety of different plant foods, giving us a huge access to thousands of micronutrients and thousands of phytochemicals without overeating. And as we have access to good nutrient diversity and good fiber diversity, we build up the best microbiome in the gut, which then thickens the biofilm that covers the villi. What I'm saying right now is a variety of different types of fiber, not just eating wheat fiber and psyllium, not just eating brown rice and eating the fiber from rice. It's eating a wide variety of different fibers. It affords us the ability to have the most protective microbiome. And that biofilm slows the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. So now when you have a mango or oatmeal, the glycemic load of that is lowered because you have a thickened biofilm because you ate the beans and the mushrooms and the
So
onions.
let's back up a little. Let's back up a little bit so our audience comes along. What is a biofilm?
The biofilm is a covering of healthy bacteria that coats the villi in the small intestines. My fingers.
The villi are?
The villi are these interior, the shape of the small intestines, this tube that runs and carries the food and digests the food, absorbs the food. That tube doesn't have a smooth wall. The wall has these finger-like projections. The wall is shaped like mountains and valleys. And these mountains and valleys, the food is absorbed through the cells. But the food doesn't have access directly to the cell. It has to go through a coating of bacteria before it can get through the cell into the bloodstream. And the coating of bacteria over the villi is called the biofilm. And the health of the biofilm affects how you think, your immune function, and how fast nutrients and glucose enters the bloodstream. And I'm saying here, it's a benefit for the glucose and the calories to enter the bloodstream more slowly, not more rapidly. And the biofilm, a healthy biofilm, slows the entry of calories into the bloodstream, which is beneficial.
So it gets you that steady burn versus the spikes.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Understood.
And your question about just living on rice, it's not going to give you a healthy biofilm compared to eating a wide variety of foods, particularly mushrooms, onions, green vegetables, beans, and nuts. All these different types of foods with different types of fibers, different types of sterols and stanols contribute to a healthier microbiome and a healthier biofilm.
So all these wonderful reasons that I've heard before, I'm sure all of us have heard before, and yet we're so caught in not just what we talked about before with the social pressure and this and that, but just this addiction to where it seems like, I've experienced it myself, and I've watched other people go through it. It's like you have the good intentions, but then there's that bagel, okay? And it's like it sits there and it calls to you, and pretty soon you're munching down, even though you know it's not the right thing for you. What can you say that's going to give people hope that they can move beyond that?
It's the success is proportional to the amount of prolonged abstinence from the addictive substance. So this really works. people really don't desire bagels and French fries and fried foods and ice cream anymore when they have substitutes that taste good, that are healthy for them, and they've been enough time away from those highly addictive, hyper palatable foods. In other words, we could make designer foods made by food scientists to increase the amount of palatability or the bliss point, right? More sugar, more salt, more NFG, more, we add things to the food to make it so it overwhelms people so they're addicted to it. And they can't live without those donuts, or those French
it's
fries.
good marketing, right?
Yeah, right.
Everything is run by the almighty dollar here. So
right.
the marketing and everything that's being offered to us and everything that's being advertised, it sounds like it's diametrically opposed to what our bodies need.
That's right. And an ice cream with just blending up frozen banana with some real vanilla bean powder and some macadamia nuts tastes really like a great ice cream. And it's healthy for you, right? You could take mango and coconut and whip it together with a little bit of lemon. It's like fantastically delicious. You can make these ice creams, but they're not as sweet and they're not hitting the bliss point as much as more of a conventional ice cream or conventional cheesecake or conventional, these all healthy alternatives are not going to be quite as stimulating and attractive to the person as the real ice cream, with the real sugar in it, with the real extra amount of sweets in it. Because I love this banana ice cream. It's not quite as sweet, but I don't like the sweet stuff. It's too sweet for me. But what I'm saying in here, that it took me many months or even years for my taste preferences to change, to find that those conventional ice creams are too sweet and to make me feel my pasty, and I could taste the bleach in like Carvel or a certain type of ice cream. You could say, oh, I can taste the bleach in the ice cream machines. It's like, and it's too sweet. I'd rather have my healthy version of this at home. Or it's the same thing, that it takes time of abstaining from alcohol or abstaining from cigarettes or abstaining from high sweets or high fats or high oils, where you're actually go through a period of time where you're going to be a little uncomfortable and you're still going to desire those foods for a while. That's why a person who is trying to get off cocaine, they put them away for 3 months into a facility and they have them in forced abstinence for a few months. With the expectation is the craving for the cocaine won't be as strong after being away from it for 3 months. So people need connection. They need social support. They need information where they're having some accountability to other people. Like when you try to get off smoking, you have to say to your whole friends and family, I'm quitting smoking. I'm making a promise. Help me stay away from cigarettes. I'm getting cigarettes out of the house, and I'm not going to touch cigarettes or go and keep me away from, bars where people are smoking, because I'm not tempted. And with enough time away from smoking, the desire for that lessens, and eventually it can be disgusting to you to inhale, to want to smoke. But it took time for that to occur. And it's the same thing with food. When people are committed to making the change, it takes obviously dedication and initiative and perseverance. It's not that easy, but you have to abstain from these things that light the fire under your desire if you want to decrease their attraction, and they're calling you to want to have those things. I wouldn't think of going to eating pizza or chocolate chip cookies or go through an airport and want to have those kind of foods, because it would be like how you need 10 men to try to tie me down, to shoot me up with a drug. I wouldn't want to put that stuff in my body, and it doesn't attract me at all. But it takes a long time to get to that point where you don't even feel like you would want that.
We're almost out of time in this segment, but also our environment, high speed, fast this, fast that, isn't that also diametrically opposed to being able to eat healthy? I mean, you spoke of an airport. You can't just walk through an airport and grab your wonderful whipped up frozen fruit that doesn't have a bunch of added sugar and this and that and the next thing.
But I have an apple in my bag with a bag of pistachio nuts. I'm just as happy with what I brought. Or I brought a wrap that's made with mushrooms and avocado and sprouts and onion and a delicious Thai sauce on it, Thai curry sauce.
But
I have my own food, but I prepared that food, and that's part of being not an addict, because the addict will go unconsciously to the airport without any food.
Exactly.
So they subconsciously have an excuse to eat that food, whereas the person who's not an addict will plan ahead to have food, the right kind of food that'll satisfy them and make them feel that they're having something delicious in their bag, so they're not tempted. So it's a different mindset.
Well, we are out of time in this segment.
Okay.
But please stay with us as Dr. Furman and I continue to explore healing properties of food. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is there proof that food can cure disease? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with the author of Eat for Life, Dr. Joel Furman. Dr. Furman, what are some of the most exciting disease reversal causes that you've seen?
Well, to me, I'm so blessed that I've had the opportunity to work with so many people who made complete recoveries from serious illnesses. And I could just give a few stories, but each story, right, represent hundreds of people or thousands who have similar stories. Like a woman who had lupus, who destroyed her kidney on the National Renal Transplant List, waiting for a new kidney, with a creatinine of 4.2. And after following in this program and working with me nutritionally and weaning off her drugs gradually, her kidney came totally back to normal again, with her creatinine now 0.8, less than 1.
The
Normal
kidney that
function.
had been the kidney that had been destroyed?
The kidney that had been destroyed came back to normal. There must have been some hibernating cells or some functional kidney cells to begin with, because when an organ starts to die, you have some completely dead cells, some cells that are not functioning, kind of hibernating, and some cells that are still functioning. But obviously, the body she was young enough and healthy enough where she was able to come back from a 4.2 creatinine level, which is pretty much 90% of kidney function, 90% of kidney not functioning. That's made it. And so there's one example. Another example of young people are a girl who was in bed from 7th, 8th grade, and 9th grade with headaches so severe she couldn't go to school. She was even hospitalized in Boston at a major hospital in Boston on trying experimental headache treatments. She followed my nutritional plan for 2 months and was able to get back in school again, get off all drugs, get off narcotics. And she actually got on the school track team and ran for school president and went to college and had a great normal life, has her own children now. I can give an example of a woman who, I have many people with psoriatic arthritis who were almost crippled with not just the psoriasis in their ears, in their private parts, and all over their body, when taking drugs and not, in any case, many people who've removed the psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis with autoimmune conditions. Many
And yet,
people. Go ahead.
and with this evidence, and it sounds like it's empirical evidence and it's pretty strong, why are we still going to doctors that prescribe all these drugs? And why are those doctors not prescribing food instead of drugs?
Well, that's my mission for the last 40 years, is trying to, write and speak and advocate. And now there are new medical journals who are publishing more about this. There's the International Journal of Disease Prevention and Reversal. I've published multiple studies and multiple cases in that journal. We have I've published more than 15 separate scientific studies in medical journals. Not the studies I review and I use to support my work, but the studies I was personally one of the researchers on that project. You follow me? And I've published data from the patient sets that I'm discussing now. And then many other people have as well. There are many other physicians that have, and nutritional researchers have. So there's a tremendous amount of scientific evidence. So this is evident. Lifestyle medicine is evidence-based medicine. And much of what medical doctors do, which is drug-based medicine, is not evidence-based. It doesn't have the evidence and the efficacy and the safety of lifestyle medicine.
How much does what the established insurance company policies have to do with this?
Well, that's an excellent question, too, because doctors are rated based on their adherence to drug prescribing regimens. And as a doctor gets prescribed more drugs and meets the conventional drug prescribing, you could say, agenda, their scores go up. So people look for them and say, oh, that's a highly rated doctor. And their payments could be based on, they can make more money as they adhere and prescribe more conventionally. So a doctor has to choose to reduce their income if they want to prescribe less and get people off medications. So yes, the conventional, and also because doctor visits are paid by, the more visits you can squeeze in and the more you can do procedures, the more you're going to make more money. So doctors aren't paid for keeping people healthy and not coming in. And so they lose money as they keep people healthy and have less visits. They make more money when they have more patient visits. But in any case, yes, absolutely, that our economy and our medical care is not based on, it's not, the foundation is not teaching people how to eat, how to live healthfully. Now, as a leader in the lifestyle medicine community, we are teaching doctors to take diabetic patients and see them in a group visit. And every Wednesday night, there's a group visit for the diabetics, and the doctors will lecture and teach. And they could bill the insurance company for the group visit charge. So they can still make money. So we've talked about ways how doctors can still make a living and make money in educating, because you can't educate a person in a 10-minute visit. You need hours, and they need to be not just 1 hour. They need an hour 1 week, and next month another hour, and the next month another hour. They need medication adjustment downward. So this is a specialty in itself. How to motivate and educate people to.
When we're working on education, shouldn't it start in the schools? I mean, the nutrition we get in schools is horrific, isn't it?
Yes, that's the most effective way to do things. Because, people say, why can't you get doctors to learn more about this? And I'm saying, yeah, but, we want to get doctors to tell people, after they get lung cancer, that they should have never smoked, because they don't go to the doctor. After you have high blood pressure, after you had your first heart attack, did you change your diet? No, we should tell people at the beginning. And that's not, and you know what? It worked. When we started bringing the no smoking message into the elementary schools, no drugs, no smoking, then we saw, not only did we see as people grew, they didn't smoke as much, but it had a more positive effect on adults who were smoking to quit, because we based the information on the whole population learning this information, including children. The children themselves put a lot of pressure on parents to make better health habits, not just parents on children. So you're absolutely correct in that. If this is going to be extremely effective at revolutionizing the health of American society, we have to have a better job of bringing nutritional education to the schoolroom. And in Europe, they now have reading, writing, arithmetic, and nutritional science. And those are because what's going to affect your ability to succeed in life, to get more educated, to be happy, to be mentally healthy, and to be physically healthy, it's your nutrition. So it should be reading, writing, arithmetic, and nutritional science. And we don't do that in this country. We're totally against that, because in this country, we want the freedom to use addictive, cancer-causing agents on our children. And we want the parents to be able to harm their children using soda and fast foods. And we don't want anybody telling us what to do. And I'm not, I'm saying we have to add this to our educational process, as you just said the same thing.
Well, one of the things that is running rampant in our schools is ADD and ADHD, and it's being grossly medicated with very strong drugs. What's your take on that one?
Everything is a medical or a pill solution. This is a really deep and confusing subject. Let me give you an example. The health authorities and almost every doctor in America recommends women of childbearing age take folic acid to prevent neural tube defects, right? Everybody almost knows that. You take folic acid to prevent neural tube defects. Now, folic acid is a synthetic product made in the laboratory. It's not the same chemical as folate that's found in vegetables and beans. And had you been eating vegetables and beans, you'd get all the folate you need, not just to prevent neural tube defects, to prevent heart defects and other defects too, including childhood brain tumors and childhood cancers are linked to diets that are low in green vegetables, not just during pregnancy, but even pre-pregnancy, to diets low in green vegetables. And the consumption of luncheon meats and processed meats like hamburgers, like hot dogs and pastrami and bologna is linked to brain tumors and autism and brain tumors and birth defects. So instead of teaching women that they have how, as a primate, how green vegetables are so integrated into our primate genetics, and you can't have a normal baby, a normal immune system, or a normal life unless you have exposure to green vegetable substances. Instead of teaching them that, you know what we do? We give them a pill of folic acid. Now, folic acid makes you don't have to eat green vegetables now because you think you're protected taking the folic acid. But folic acid doesn't behave like folate. So folic acid increases risk of breast cancer in the woman taking it, and increases risk of breast cancer in the child as well as they grow. So we've turned everything into a pill right from before a person's born. Instead of telling people to eat vegetables, we give them a pill, and telling people to cut out the salt, we give them high blood pressure medications. But we don't And then the American College of Cardiology, the American Heart Association, wants people who have heart disease to cut out the salt. What? Cut out the salt after they have heart disease? If it was supposed to cut out the salt after they had heart disease, then why didn't you have them cut out the salt before they had heart disease? We don't wait till a person gets lung cancer to cut them up. So everything is done backwards here.
And against nature. And it's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
You can't fool Mother Nature.
So, Dr. FUHRMAN, it's that time. In fact, we're just about out of time in the entire show. But I have to ask you, what's your mission?
You know, I've been doing this for so many decades that my mission is just to help people be healthier and happier. And whether I affect 10 people or 10,000 people, it makes me feel good that I did something in my power to help people. And whether I affect, and the effort or the intent to try to help somebody makes you feel good about yourself. And so I'm doing what other people are doing too. They're trying to give back to something where they feel they're being useful to others. And whether they help a few people or many people, you just get the same good feeling. So that's my mission. And that's what the success of my career has been based on that.
Is being helpful. It's a beautiful focus because, boy, we need help out there, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we sure do. So, how do you see the diet you recommend supporting the evolution of consciousness and the world at large?
This is very good because, when we eat healthfully, it's better for the planet. It creates less toxic byproducts. I mean, we're dumping, we can go on and about dumping plastics into the waterways and how we're utilizing, burning down the rainforest. But in any case, the more we grow food, the more we use regenerative organic agriculture, the more our diet is plant-based, the more we have less impact on polluting and climate change. And we keep the world a better, cleaner place for future generations. So taking care of our own health and eating healthier and supporting the organic agriculture movement also puts less pesticides into the environment, that kills less bees and protects less worms. So we're taking care of the planet for future generations, and we're protecting ourselves at the same time. And it's all interacts in a way to be a kinder, more thoughtful, more compassionate, and a person with more humanity. So I think that this nutrition plays a big role in everything we do and how we think.
And that we can think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's that magic moment. We are out of time. Dr. FUHRMAN, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Our guest this hour has been Dr. Joel FUHRMAN. Dr. FUHRMAN is internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing and the author of Eat for Life. To find out more about Dr. FUHRMAN and all he has to offer, visit his website, drfuhrman.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to a rapidly evolving world.